Hey, I'm Ursula and I'm a product photographer. And one of the most common questions that I get is, what is the best focal length for product photography? While there's no right or wrong answer, in this video, I want to show you how your focal length affects the end result. In other words, how it affects the product or the scene that you're shooting. And hopefully by the end of the video, you'll have a better idea of what focal length to use when shooting your own product photos. I will say when it comes to picking the right focal length, it depends on the product that you're shooting, the scene that you're shooting, and what the end desired result is. Right now, I am at a 70mm focal length. And what a focal length of say 50 to 70 millimeters helps me do in this photo is to capture those cans more realistically as far as how the shape is presented. So for example, if I shoot with a focal length of say 18 millimeters, 24 millimeters, what's gonna happen is I will have to get closer to the product or closer to the scene, and that is going to end up distorting the scene and the product. All right, so now we're gonna try a different product or a different photo to show you how focal length affects your image and the product itself. So right now we are at a focal length of 70 millimeters. So we do have to adjust the camera and the angle. So at 70 millimeters, you have a beautiful shape of the product. There is some distance between the lens and the scene as needed. So basically, the larger the focal length, the wider the product becomes. This happens with portrait photography too. The larger the focal length, the wider the face. The shorter the focal length, the narrower it becomes, or the more distorted in product photography. That's what we deal with, okay? So now, if we wanna go to a focal length of about 35 millimeters, or 24 millimeters. If you shoot from this particular distance, you don't get too much distortion. So that's a little tip there. If you do have a prime lens of 24, 35 millimeter, and you don't want to have so much distortion on your product, if you're shooting from a little bit more far away, you'll avoid some of that distortion. So if you are at a short focal length of 24 millimeters, or 17 millimeters, and the closer you get, the more distorted that product becomes, okay? Some people like this artistic look, but it's not for everybody. But just to show you how focal length does affect your product. So if I stand from this distance, I'm at 24 millimeters right now, and you'll see the product getting a little bit wider and wider. So this is what we say a 50 millimeter lens or focal length is that sweet spot for product photography because you don't get too much distortion, you get the real shape of the product as well. All right, so just for a moment, we're gonna pretend that this is a real kitchen because I wanna show you another way that your focal length affects your image. And why I say that it depends on preference and what your desired end result is. Now, whether this is a real kitchen or a backdrop, the concept of what I'm about to show you is the same. So if you're gonna shoot a single product, for example, and you want the background to be blurry or blurred out, then you'll need a large focal length, particularly something above 50 millimeters. The larger the focal length, the more blurry you will experience in your photo. And vice versa, the shorter the focal length, the less blurriness and the more clear your backdrop or your background is going to become. All right, so you can see here at a 70 millimeter focal length, a long focal length, you'll get that blurriness on the background, okay? Another thing that can help you achieve this easier is by creating even more distance between the backdrop and the product itself, allowing you to create more blurriness or more of a bokeh, if that's what you're going for too, depending on what you're shooting. This helps a little bit to create more blurriness on that image, okay? So if you were to go to a short focal length, right now I'm at 24 millimeters, If you take the photo from here, you can then crop it. However, the background is going to not be blurred out, making it not look realistic if you are using a background. But if you do it in the kitchen, of course, then it doesn't really matter. It just depends on what look you're going for. Okay. But if you get closer, you can see distortion. It just doesn't look nice anymore. So this is how focal length can also affect your images. Now, if you're curious to learn even more about how to capture beautiful product photos with beginner equipment, I do have a free mini course that teaches you how to capture a beautiful product photo with minimal and beginner equipment. You can find that link below.